God, I hope never. I'd rather die than marry him, she said after her friend jokingly asked when I'd propose. I smiled, finished my drink, and left the bar. She called an hour later, voice shaking, asking why I left. I said, just saving you from a fate worse than death, and hung up. Hey viewers, before we move on to the video, please make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button if you want to see more stories like this. Thanks. The bar was all polished concrete and neon accents, the kind of place where the cocktails have names like Smoked Regret and cost more than a decent steak. I hated it, but Qley loved it, and Maya and Jenna lived for it. So here I was, on a Thursday night, playing my part. My part was the boyfriend, the driver, the wallet, the listener. I nursed a beer, the lone sturdy brown bottle in a forest of delicate, colorful glasses. Qley was holding court, telling a story about her disastrous presentation. Her hands flew through the air, her laugh a bright, sharp bell I used to find exhilarating. Now, I mostly noted its volume. And then he had the audacity to ask for my sources. As if the data visualization wasn't intuitive enough, she finished, rolling her eyes. Maya and Jenna nodded in fervent sympathy. Total power play, Maya said, sipping her violet-hued drink. Classic mid-manager insecurity, Jenna affirmed. Qley's hand found my forearm, her grip tight, her nails, painted a color called Boss Bitch Red, digging in just a little. Leo gets it, don't you, babe? You know how it is with these tech bro dinosaurs. They all looked at me. My role required a line. Sounds frustrating, I offered, giving her arm a pat. It was the right line. She beamed, squeezing my arm again before releasing it to grab her drink. A frothy pink thing called a Paloma Promised. She'd ordered it because the name was iconic. I went back to my beer. I'd heard a version of this story already, at home over takeout. I'd listened, I'd validated her feelings. I'd even suggested a diplomatic way to handle the mid-manager dinosaur next time. That advice was not part of the bar performance. Here, the story was about martyrdom, not solutions. This was our life. For 2 years, I'd been the steady ground beneath her whirlwind. When she'd been laid off 8 months ago, I'd covered the rent, cooked the meals, and talked her down from 100 panic spirals. I'd celebrated this new job like it was my own. We'd picked out this very bar to celebrate her first paycheck. Our spot, she'd called it. I looked at her now, glittering under the neon, and felt a familiar fondness, worn soft at the edges by a fatigue I couldn't name. She was beautiful, ambitious, alive. And I was the guy who made sure the alive part didn't burn our life down. The conversation shifted to Jenna's disastrous dating app experiences. Qley leaned into me, whispering loud enough for the table to hear. God, I'm so lucky I don't have to deal with that anymore. Right, baby? She planted a loud, theatrical kiss on my cheek. I smiled, the way you do. Another round arrived. I didn't order another beer. I was driving. I watched them, a trio of beautiful birds preening in the reflective glow of their own lives. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A text from my sister, asking if I wanted to help rebuild the carburetor on her old Civic this weekend. A little bubble of genuine warmth popped in my chest. Yes, I typed back. Absolutely. Oh, who's that? Qley sing-songed, snatching playfully from my phone. I moved it away, a reflex. Just my sis. Weekend plans. Ugh, you and that greasy garage, she said, but she was smiling. It was part of our routine. She'd mock my obsession with my motorcycle project. I'd pretend to be wounded. She'd call me her handyman, with a wink. It was our dance. Maya, emboldened by her third smoked regret, flopped her elbows on the table. Her eyes, glazed with alcohol and affection, drifted between Qley and me. She wore the look of someone about to deliver a profound, drunken truth. You know, she slurred, pointing a finger that wobbled between us. You too. You're, like, solid. It's actually kinda gross. She giggled. Jenna joined in. Qley preened, wrapping her arm around mine. We are, aren't we? No, I'm serious. Maya insisted, her voice rising. The table next to us glanced over. Like, when's it gonna happen, Qley? When's this guy finally gonna put a ring on it? You've been dating forever. The question hung in the air, a sudden, clumsy spotlight. Jenna's giggle died. Qley's arm around mine stiffened. A flashbulb memory went off in my head. Us, 6 months ago, hiking a trail. She'd slipped on loose gravel, and I'd caught her. We'd stood there, breathless, hearts pounding from the scare. She'd looked up at me, mud on her cheek, and said, "Don't ever let me go, okay?" I'd kissed her, tasting sweat and chapstick, and meant it with every fiber of my being. Never. I looked at her now, waiting for the performative blush, the "oh, stop," the squeeze of my arm that meant maybe soon. Qley let out a laugh. It wasn't her bright, bell laugh. It was sharper, thinner, a knife being drawn. She untangled her arm from mine and reached for her Paloma promised. She took a long, deliberate sip, her eyes on the pink liquid, not on me, not on Maya. "God," she said, the word landing like a drop of ice in the sudden quiet. "I hope never." The neon light above us hummed. Jenna's smile froze into a grimace. Maya's intoxicated gleam faded into confusion. Qley set her glass down with a precise click. She leaned forward, her voice dropping into a conspiratorial stage whisper that carried perfectly in the lull of the bar's music. He's safe. A total sweetheart. But marry him." She let out a little puff of air, a sound of pure derision. "Ugh, I'd rather die than be trapped in that boring little life." The words didn't feel real. They felt like subtitles for a movie I wasn't watching. Boring little life. I saw our apartment, the one I'd painted while she was at a yoga retreat. The garden box I'd built on the balcony because she wanted fresh herbs. The comfortable couch where we'd spent 100 rainy Sundays. "Qley," Jenna hissed, a desperate warning. But Qley was on a roll, the cocktail and the audience fueling her. She finally flicked her eyes toward me, not with guilt, but with a kind of defiant amusement, like she'd just told a particularly edgy joke and was waiting for me to get the punchline. "I mean, think about it," she said, her gaze holding mine, challenging me to flinch. "The nice little house. The nice little yard. Watching him tinker with that greasy bike every weekend for the rest of my life. No thanks." She shuddered, a theatrical, full-body shake. I'd suffocate. Literally suffocate. The world did not slow down. It snapped into a hyper-focused, silent clarity. The hum of the neon was a roar. The condensation on my beer bottle was a constellation of cold, perfect droplets. I could smell her perfume, expensive, citrusy, over the stale beer and fried food. I saw not just the woman in front of me, but a montage projected on the cold, polished wall behind her. Her, crying in my kitchen after the layoff, saying, "What would I do without your calm?" Her, toast raised at this very bar, saying, "To my rock." Her, curled against me on that boring couch, whispering, "This is all I'll ever need." It had all been a performance. The fondness I'd felt moments ago curdled, evaporated, leaving behind a vacuum so pure and cold it was almost peaceful. Maya looked like she wanted to vomit. Jenna studied the tabletop as if the grain of the wood held the secrets of the universe. Qley's smirk wavered, just for a second, as she registered the absolute lack of reaction on my face. I wasn't angry. I wasn't hurt. I was an astronomer observing a distant, dying star. A profound, unshakable certainty settled in my bones. This was the truth. The first and last completely honest thing she had ever said to me. I felt my lips move. They stretched into a small, easy smile. It wasn't a bitter smile. It was the smile of a man who has just solved a complex, nagging problem. Her eyes widened, confused. Still smiling, I picked up my half-finished beer. I brought the bottle to my lips and drained it in one long, smooth swallow. The bitterness was familiar, comforting in its simplicity. I placed the empty bottle on the table with a soft, final clink. I stood up. The chair didn't scrape. I moved with a quiet, fluid grace I didn't know I possessed. "Leo." Her voice was a confused squeak. The defiance was gone, replaced by the first flicker of alarm. "Where are you going?" "Don't be so sensitive, it was a joke." The words bounced off the new, silent space around me. I reached for my wallet, pulled out 2 20s, more than enough for my beer and a generous share of the smoked regrets and Palomas promised, and laid them flat on the table, a green paper period at the end of her sentence. I turned. I didn't look at Maya or Jenna. I didn't look back at her. I walked past the bar, past the laughing groups, past the hostess who gave me a curious glance. The cool night air hit my face as I pushed through the heavy door. It smelled of rain and city. From behind me, faintly, I heard her voice, rising in pitch. tinged with a performative frustration that was already crumbling into something real. Oh my God, is he seriously walking out? Leo, Leo. The sound was swallowed by the city. I didn't run. I walked to my car, a calm, steady rhythm on the pavement. The problem was solved. The equation was complete. All that was left was the logistics of absence. And for the first time in 2 years, my mind was perfectly, peacefully clear. The drive home was conducted in a vacuum of sound. I didn't turn on the radio. The frantic, pulsing energy of the bar was gone, replaced by the steady purr of my car's engine and the rhythmic swipe of the wipers against a fine, misting rain. My hands were steady at 10 and 2. My breathing was even. I felt like a surgeon after a successful, complicated operation, precise, spent, and utterly detached from the emotional mess left on the table. I parked in my usual spot. Our usual spot. The thought had no purchase. It was just a space of asphalt now. The apartment was quiet, still holding the ghost of our evening routine. Her heels kicked off by the door, a lipstick-stained glass by the sink, the throw blanket rumpled on her side of the couch. I didn't look at any of it. I walked past the living room, past the bedroom door, and into the second bedroom I used as an office and a den. This was my space. The one she'd always half-jokingly called my man cave, with a tone that implied it was a childish indulgence. Here, the bookshelves held my engineering textbooks and motorbike manuals, not the aspirational decor magazine she favored. A framed map of a hiking trail we'd never gotten around to doing. My old, comfortable desk chair. I sat down. The cold, analytical clarity that had descended in the bar hadn't lifted. It had crystallized. There was no pain yet. Pain required connection, a sense of loss. What I felt was the absence of a weight I hadn't realized I was carrying. The weight of her performance and my complicity in it. I opened my laptop. I created a new document. The title, Exit Strategy. The actions flowed from my fingers, a logical sequence divorced from emotion. Phase 1, Immediate Segregation. Move essential items to guest room tonight. Clothes, toiletries, laptop, crucial documents. Change passwords on all financial accounts. Joint savings was negligible, but still. Forward personal email to a new, private account. Phase 2, Physical Extraction. Research short-term rentals / Airbnbs for 1 month minimum. Budget, flexible. Contact 2 guys and a truck movers for a small load, ASAP appointment. Priority items, toolboxes, motorcycle gear, personal books, desktop computer, bike parts. Secure a temporary storage unit for said items if new place isn't ready. Pack remaining personal belongings into boxes clearly labeled LEO. Phase 3, Communication Blackout. Block Qley on phone, WhatsApp, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. Set email filters to automatically archive anything from her address. Inform landlord, via formal email, of intent to remove myself from the lease, citing cohabitation breakdown. Offer to assist in finding a replacement tenant or pay penalty fee. Phase 4, Financial and Legal Disentanglement. Cancel shared streaming services, her accounts. Remove my card from her Uber Eats account. Draft a simple, civil email outlining division of remaining shared items. TV, microwave, the damn couch. Propose she keeps all, I take none, in lieu of any further financial discussion. Locate my copy of the lease. I worked for 2 hours. I booked a furnished studio apartment in a complex across town, available for move-in tomorrow afternoon. I scheduled the movers for 9 a.m., noting in the instructions, items only from home office and marked boxes in second bedroom. No items from master bedroom or primary living area. I paid the deposits with a calm, swift efficiency. My phone, face down on the desk, began to vibrate. Then again, and again, a fluttering, angry insect. I imagined her, back in the apartment she'd shared with Maya and Jenna, or maybe still at the bar, fueled by indignation and confusion. The screen would light up with her name, then a number I didn't recognize, then maybe Maya's number. I didn't flip it over. The vibrations were a distant weather event. Finally, around 1 a.m., as I was sealing a box of photos, only the ones of my family, my friends pre-Qley, it rang with the unknown number. Some last ghost of the man I'd been 2 hours ago, made me pick up, not to hear her, but to formally pronounce the death of that ghost. Leo, what the hell? You just left me there. You embarrassed me. Her voice was a weapon, sharp with anger, but the edge was brittle. Underneath it, I heard the first tremor of panic. She'd expected a fight. She'd expected me to come home wounded, to argue, to beg for an explanation. She'd prepared for a dramatic reconciliation scene. My silence was a script she didn't know. I looked out the window of my office at the darkened city. My voice, when it came, was flat, placid. The voice of a customer service agent ending a call. Just saving you from a fate worse than death. I ended the call. I powered the phone off completely. The silence that followed was total, and it was mine. The next 72 hours were a study in mechanical motion. I slept, deeply and dreamlessly, on the guest bed. I woke at 6. When I heard her key in the lock around 6:30 p.m., late, probably after debriefing with her friends, I was in my office, the door closed. I listened to the hesitant footsteps, the pause outside the door, the knock. Leo, are you in there? We need to talk. Silence. This is ridiculous. You can't just hide. A harder knock. Then, the sound of her retreating footsteps, louder and angrier. The following morning, a Saturday, I left as she slept. I met the movers at the curb. They were fast and efficient. In 20 minutes, my motorcycle, draped in a cover, for boxes of tools, 3 boxes of books and personal effects, and my computer were loaded into their truck. I handed the foreman the key. Just leave it inside the apartment door when you're done, I said. I drove to the new studio. It was beige, anonymous, and smelled of clean linen. It had a small, bare balcony. I put my single suitcase in the corner. This wasn't a home. It was a forward operating base. And I felt more at peace standing in its emptiness than I had in our curated, adorable apartment in months. The digital deluge began in earnest. It followed a predictable, pathetic curve. Phase 1, righteous anger. From her number, after I'd unblocked it briefly to ensure she got the legal/logistical emails. Qley, you're overreacting. It was a joke. My friends think you're being a manipulative jerk. Qley, I can't believe you're doing this. After everything I've given up for you. Qley, you're really just going to ghost me? What are you, 12? Phase 2, guilt and gaslighting. From Jenna's number. Unknown. Leo, it's Jenna. Look, Qley's really upset. She didn't mean it like that. You know how she gets after a few drinks. She loves you. Can you please just call her? From a different unknown number. Likely Maya. Unknown. Dude. Harsh. She's crying. Phase 3, feigned concern and hoovers. From her number again. Qley, I'm worried about you. This isn't like you. Where are you staying? Please talk to me. We can fix this. Qley, I saw the movers came. You took your bike. Where are you? I'm scared. I read them all with the dispassionate interest of an anthropologist studying a primitive culture. I deleted them. I reblocked the numbers. The only message I responded to was from my landlord, confirming receipt of my formal notice and my agreement to forfeit my share of the security deposit to break the lease. Thank you for your prompt and professional handling of this, he wrote back. Rare. On Sunday night, sitting on the floor of my new studio eating takeout sushi, my phone buzzed with a call from my oldest friend, Paul. Dude, he said, his voice uncharacteristically solemn. What the hell happened? Qley just called me, sobbing. Said you vanished and took all your stuff. She said you had some kind of mental break over a joke. I hadn't told anyone. I'd been existing in my bubble of quiet action. What was the joke, Paul? I asked, my voice calm. She said, man, she said something about you proposing, and she said she'd rather die than marry you. But she said it was clearly a joke, Leo, that you took it way out of context. I could see her version perfectly. She was the victim of my sudden, unstable sensitivity. My cruel overreaction. It wasn't out of context, I said, picking up a piece of tuna. It was the context for the last 2 years. I just finally heard it. Paul was quiet for a moment. Yeah, he finally grunted. Yeah, okay. She called me, man. To get to you. That's fucked up. You good? Need a place to crash. I'm good. Better than good. But thanks. Okay. Well. Fuck her, then. You want to come over next weekend? I'm rebuilding the porch. Beer and power tools. The first genuine smile in days touched my lips. I'd love that. That was the moment the vacuum inside me began to fill, not with pain, but with something else. Air. Light. Possibility. The first month was a lesson in self-reclamation. I joined a moto touring club I'd bookmarked years ago and never joined because weekends were our time. I spent a Sunday with them riding winding coastal highways, the roar of the engine a physical therapy for my soul. I had beers with them afterwards, men and women whose names I learned, who talked about carburetors and road trips with no subtext, no performance. I reconnected with Paul and with my sister, Lisa. I helped her with the Civic, our hands black with grease, talking about everything and nothing. You seem lighter, she observed, not pushing. I was. At work, I accepted a project I'd previously declined, a 6-month development stint that required deep focus and some travel. My boss, surprised and pleased, said, I always thought you weren't interested in the grind. Glad to see you're leaning in. I hadn't been disinterested. I'd just been managing the constant, draining emotional weather system that was Qley's life. Now, with clear skies, my career horizons expanded. I met a woman in the moto club, Sarah. She was a graphic designer who rode a vintage Triumph. Our first conversation was about the challenges of finding a good mechanic. There was no flirtation, just shared interest. It was refreshing. I did not think of Qley. Or, when I did, it was as one thinks of a removed appendix, a source of past trouble, now irrelevant. The second month, the karma began to seep through the sealed doors of my old life. It didn't come from her. It came from a muted, indirect source. An email arrived, from an address I didn't recognize, but with a name I did, Lisa Chun. Lisa was a former colleague of Qley's, a quiet, sharp woman who'd always been civil to me. The subject line was, checking in. Leo, I hope it's okay I'm emailing you. I got your address from the old team directory. I'm not writing this for Qley, and I'm not asking you to do anything. I just wanted to say I'm sorry for what happened. I heard about the bar. Maya told me what Qley said, verbatim. I was appalled. I also feel I should tell you, because you were always decent to me, that things have unraveled for her. After you left, her performance at work nosedived. She was always distracted, blaming others. She was let go last week. From what I gather, the apartment lease is up next month and she can't afford it alone. Maya and Jenna aren't letting her move in, something about drama. She's been trying to date, but that comment she made about you has gotten around in our wider social circle. It hasn't painted her in a good light. I'm telling you this not to elicit sympathy from you, but because I believe in accountability. You were a good partner to her. What she did was cruel, and the consequences are hers to bear. I hope you're well. Lisa, I read it twice. I felt nothing for Qley, no schadenfreude, no pity. The report was like a news bulletin from a country I'd once visited and now barely remembered. The primary emotion was gratitude for Lisa's basic human decency. I wrote back a simple, 3-line reply. Lisa, thank you for your note and your kindness. I'm doing very well. I hope you are too. Best, Leo. Her reply was almost immediate. Good. I'm glad. This seemed to be the trigger. As if Lisa's contact had pierced a spiritual dam, the desperate attempts began again, now laced with a new, raw terror. Attempt 1, the nostalgia play. A text from another new number. It was a photo of us at the beach from a year ago, both sunburnt and laughing. I was building an elaborate sandcastle. She was pretending to crown me with a seaweed necklace. We looked happy. We were happy in that moment. Or I was. She was perhaps just enjoying being photographed looking happy. Unknown, remember this? I was so happy. I've never been that happy since. I miss us. I deleted the photo and the message. The past was a country that no longer issued visas. Attempt 2, the crisis play. 3 days later, my phone rang late in the evening. I was sketching plans for a custom bike modification, a podcast on in the background. I didn't recognize the number, but something in the late hour made me answer. It was her, and she was breaking. The sound was pure, unfiltered distress, the kind I'd soothed so many times before. But this wasn't about a bad day at work or a friend's slight. This was the sound of a foundation collapsing. Leo, please. Her voice was shredded, hiccuping with sobs. Please. I'm going to be evicted. They posted the notice. I lost my job. I have no one. I made a terrible mistake. The biggest mistake. She was gasping for air. You're the best thing that ever happened to me. I was scared and stupid. I was trying to be cool for them, and I was so stupid. I listened. I said nothing. I looked at my sketch, at the clean lines of the design. Leo, are you there? Please say something. I'll do anything. Counseling. Anything. You're my person. You're my home. I set my pencil down. My voice was calm, clear, and as empty as the studio had been on my first night. You should call a financial advisor, I said, or a social services agency. They can help with housing resources. There was a stunned silence on the other end, followed by a wounded, animal-like whimper. What? Leo, I don't need I need you. I am not a resource, I said softly, and ended the call. Attempt 3, the flying monkeys. 2 days after that, a new area code. I answered, expecting a recruiter. Leo, sweetie. It's Carol. Qley's mom. A cold flicker of annoyance. Carol had always treated me like a pleasing accessory, a reliable piece of furniture in her daughter's life. Mrs. Dawson. Oh, Leo. We're so worried. Qley's a mess. She's just a passionate girl, you know how she is. She speaks without thinking. Her tone was syrup wrapped around steel. Don't you think you've punished her enough? She's learned her lesson. She needs you. Be the man we know you are and forgive her. This silly pride isn't worth destroying what you had. I leaned back in my chair. The manipulation was so transparent, the sense of entitlement so vast. It explained so much. Mrs. Dawson, I said, my voice never losing its polite, even keel. I am being the man I am. And that man is no longer in a relationship with your daughter. Have a good day. I didn't wait for her sputtered response. I hung up. The anger I might have once felt was absent. She was just another part of the old ecosystem, irrelevant to my new climate. Attempt 4, the mask falls. It came that night, a final, splenetic text from the number she'd used for the crisis call. The raw need was gone, burned away to reveal the bitter ash beneath. This was the unvarnished truth, the core of her, exposed by desperation. Qley, fine. You're just a coward who couldn't handle a strong woman speaking her truth. You were always boring and small, and I'm better off. You did me a favor by leaving. Have fun with your sad, empty life. I read it. And for the first time since that night in the bar, I felt a true, deep emotion regarding Qley Dawson. It wasn't hurt. It wasn't anger. It was amusement. I didn't reply. I didn't block the number immediately. I saved the message. It was the perfect coda, the receipt I never knew I needed. Proof that the fate worse than death she'd so feared had been, for me, the key to a life that was finally, authentically, my own. I powered down my computer. The studio was quiet. Through the sliding door to my small balcony, I could see the lights of the city, not as a place I was trapped, but as a landscape of possibility. The unraveling was complete, hers. Mine was a weaving, thread by steady thread, into something stronger. The middle had breathed. The silence had spoken. And now, the arc was ready to rise. 6 months to the day after I walked out of that bar, I closed on the house. It was a 1950s ranch-style fixer-upper on a quiet, tree-lined street, with a detached garage that was larger than my old studio apartment. It needed work. The kitchen was a time capsule, the floors squeaked with history, and the garden was a jungle, but the structure was sound. It had space for a workshop. It had a front porch. It was, by any definition, the beginning of a nice little house. The irony wasn't lost on me. It just didn't sting. It was simply data. The life she'd scorned as a prison was now my chosen freedom. I hired a contractor named Ray, a no-nonsense guy in his 60s who appreciated my clear plans and my willingness to swing a hammer. We started with the garage, turning it into a pristine, organized workshop. The sound of saws and the smell of fresh cut wood were my therapy. My career project was a success, earning me a promotion and a significant bonus that went straight into the house fund. The Moto Club was a regular fixture in my life. Sarah and I had gone on a few casual group rides and shared a couple of easy, laughter-filled beers afterwards. There was a quiet, mutual interest, but no rush. Everything in my life now had a sense of natural, unforced timing. The final thread from my old life was the condo. Our lease had been broken, but I'd still been on the hook for my half of the penalty. I'd paid it without complaint, a small price for clean severance. The landlord, grateful for my lack of drama, had offered me first right of refusal to buy the place when the owners decided to sell. They decided. I'd made a fair, cash offer, below asking but simple and fast. They'd accepted. I wasn't sentimental. It was a good investment in a rising market. I would clean it, paint it, and sell it for a profit. It was a business transaction. The day this sold sign went up in the front yard of the old condo, felt like the last period on a very long, poorly written chapter. That same afternoon, as I was loading tools into my truck outside the new house, my phone buzzed. It was a local number. I answered, assuming it was Ray or the tile supplier. Leo? Hi. It's Lisa. Lisa Chun. Her voice was hesitant, apologetic. Hi, Lisa. I'm so sorry to bother you. I thought you should know. Qley knows you bought the condo. Someone from the building told her. She's not taking it well. She's been telling people you're trying to financially destroy her, to lord it over her. I think she might try to confront you. I just wanted you to be prepared. I leaned against the warm side of my truck. The sun was high, the air clean. Thanks for the heads up, Lisa. I appreciate it. But it's fine. It's just a property. You're a good guy, Leo. Too good. Just be careful. The person she is now isn't the person you knew. She paused. Actually, maybe she is. You just see it clearly now. I do. Thanks again. I hung up. I wasn't worried. I felt a distant curiosity, like wondering what the weather was doing in a city I'd left behind. The confrontation came 2 days later. I was at the condo for a final walkthrough before handing the keys to my contractor for the renovations. I was in the empty living room, measuring the windows for blinds, when I heard the key in the lock. My key, the one I'd left for the movers. She must have kept it. The door opened, and she stood there. The vibrant, polished woman from the bar was gone. This Qley was thinner, her face drawn and pale without its meticulous makeup. Her hair was pulled into a messy bun. She wore leggings and an oversized sweatshirt that swam on her. She looked young and old all at once, a ghost haunting her own past. She hovered in the doorway, her eyes scanning the empty space. The blank walls where our photos had hung, the dust outlines of the furniture, the echo of a life that was no more. Her gaze finally landed on me, and her breath hitched. Leo. I lowered the tape measure. Qley. I see the sign, she said, her voice a fragile thread. You're really gone. You bought it. She said it like an accusation, like a theft. It's an investment, I said, my tone neutral. I slipped the tape measure into my back pocket. She took a hesitant step inside, then another, as if entering a museum of her own failures. Her eyes were wide, red-rimmed, scanning the emptiness. It's so empty. It's sold. A tear escaped, tracing a path down her cheek. She didn't wipe it away. Leo, I meant it. I made a mistake. The biggest mistake of my life. The words tumbled out, rehearsed and desperate. That night, I was just trying to look cool in front of them. I was insecure. I didn't mean it. Not really. I didn't move. I didn't offer a tissue. I simply watched her, listening with the detached focus of a scientist. You have to believe me, she pleaded, her voice cracking. I've been punished, okay? I lost my job. Maya and Jenna, they abandoned me. My mom is just disappointed. I'm going to have to move back in with her. I have nothing. Nothing. She wrapped her arms around herself. And it's what I deserve. I know that now. But you were my person. You were my home. This. She gestured at the empty room. This was our home. And I ruined it. The performance was different now. No defiance. No smirk. This was raw, abject need. It was more compelling, and somehow more hollow. I waited a beat, letting her words hang in the dusty air. Then, I spoke, my voice calm and clear. Yes, you did. She flinched as if struck. And you were right, I continued. Her brow furrowed in confusion. What? No, I wasn't. I was wrong. You were right. I repeated, cutting her off gently. You said you'd rather die than be trapped in that life with me. I took a small step forward, not threatening, but claiming the space. It was the truest thing you've ever said to me. So I set you free. And in doing that, I set myself free too. She stared at me, her mouth slightly agape, the script crumbling. This wasn't the reaction she'd prepared for. Anger, forgiveness, coldness. This was agreement. But, look at me, she whispered, her voice breaking completely. I'm ruined. Our life is gone. She said it like a curse, like a monument she'd destroyed. I glanced around the empty condo, then back at her. My gesture was not one of nostalgia, but of finality. I pointed toward the front window, through which the bright red "sold" sign was clearly visible. That life is over. It was sold. It was a transaction. And my new one. I gave her the same small, serene smile I'd given her in the bar 6 months ago. The smile that had heralded the end of her world. Now, it simply marked its irrelevance. It has no room for you. Not even as a memory I bother with. The color drained from her face. This was the final, devastating truth. It wasn't that he hated her. It wasn't that he was punishing her. He had simply moved on. Completely. She was less than a ghost. She was erased. I hope you find what you're looking for, Qley. Truly. I said, and the words held no malice, no sarcasm. They were a formal, empty courtesy. But do not contact me again. This is the last time we will speak. I walked past her, toward the door. She didn't move. She stood frozen in the center of the empty room, a statue of regret in a museum no one visited. I pulled the door open. The afternoon sunlight streamed in, outlining me in its glow. Leo, she choked out, one last, whispered plea. I didn't turn. I stepped out onto the front walk, pulling the door closed behind me with a soft, definitive click. The sound of the lock engaging was the sound of a book closing. I walked to my truck, a newer model with a cap on the back for hauling materials. A decal for the Moto Club was on the rear window. I opened the door, the familiar scent of clean upholstery and coffee from my travel mug greeting me. As I started the engine, I caught a glimpse of her in the rearview mirror. She was standing at the living room window, her hand pressed against the glass, her face a mask of utter desolation, watching the sold sign, watching me leave for the second and final time. I didn't feel triumph. I didn't feel pity. I felt the quiet hum of a capable engine, the warmth of the sun through the windshield, the simple, profound peace of a man driving toward a future he had built with his own hands, on his own terms. I shifted into drive and pulled away from the curb. I didn't look back. The past was a closed property. My road, stretching out ahead, was clear, open, and mine alone. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button. What do you think about this story? Share it in the comments.